against each other over rulers that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. Hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Oh, my bad. So we, eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful friends. Welcome to Tuesday's Rogue Ways. It's June, you guys. It's June now. We're almost ready for season 4 of Rogue Ways. That is coming to you starting Thursday. We're going to have Steve Schneider. We were supposed to do it Sunday. Shit got whatever. So we're doing it Thursday, and that'll be the official start of season 4. Stay tuned for a new intro song and all kinds of exciting things this season. I am very excited about it. So yeah, let's get started. You know, it's been hot as fuck here, and I'm driving around a lot more than normal, and I don't have air conditioning, and so I just feel verklempt or whatever. I feel weird timing, Biggie Smollett. You have the little, I won't even mention the nature of the gif you just posted right when I said verklempt. But it was funny. But anyway, people will have to go to DLive to find out what would be funny about that. And most people aren't there. Most people are on YouTube. So if you're on Facebook, it turns out I can see your comments sometimes. I don't know if it's always true, but so far it's been working for a while, and I changed nothing. So that's cool. If you're there, then I might see your comment. If not, and you want me to, then hop over to YouTube, where the party is usually going and people are usually chatting. Tonight we're going to talk about Anarchy. Probably going to be pretty brief. We'll see how it turns out. I say that, and then sometimes I go for 2.5 hours. So we will see, of course. First, I like to tell you some things. So let me tell you some things. Let me do this too. This will be even better. So I like to tell you guys about my site, rogueways.org or CoreySharman.com. Corey Sharman is my pen name that I adopted because I was a public school teacher, and public school teachers aren't allowed to have personal lives, and so I wrote under a pen name just so the two worlds could never mix, even though I don't think that anything I ever wrote should be a problem for a teacher to write. Our society is hella weird, and so I have a pen name, and it's Corey Sharman. Lindsay Sharman is my real name, but it is not my real full legal name. Sharman is my middle name, so I have many names. And I write a bunch of stuff. What is cool? God, how long ago was it? Sorry, I'm just going to scroll for a second, try to find out. There's an article that a guest author wrote for my site. Here we go. Jeffrey Epstein, MKUltra, and cover-ups. And this article, all of a sudden today, has had 90 hits, which is a lot for my site, let alone one article on my site. So I'm just gonna throw this in the chat for y'all so you can see if you want to go check it out. It's a cool article. It's about obviously Jeffrey Epstein, MKUltra, and cover-ups. Mateo, I'm gonna butcher this, I hope not. Mateo del Año Quemado is our guest author here. He posted this in the Eyes Open group, and it was so well researched and written out that I asked him if he wanted to share it here on the site, and he did. So here we go. 90 hits today, which is awesome. And so that is there. Anyway, the site has lots of other stuff to check out as well, including the books that I have created over the years. Sine Curve of Aeons is my novel, my first fictional novel. It is about love and transcending time, space, and reality all throughout the yugas as humanity struggles not to fall under the weight of that giant wheel. You can get it in a hardcover as well. You can grab A Gypsy on the Res, which is my memoir from a time teaching on a Native American reservation. It is hilarious, irreverent, and deeply moving. And Mutable Realia is a collection of poems. They're cool. There's also some really cool poetry for free on this site. So those are all books you can buy and support me. Right now, if you want to buy Sine Curve of Aeons, I have 3 copies left at $10. That's the cheapest you will ever see this book. It is normally $15 plus tax plus shipping. I sometimes sell it for $15 anywhere in the United States shipped free without tax, which is already a bit of a discount. And right now I have 3 copies left at $10, no tax, shipped anywhere in the US for free. So if you want to take advantage of that, you can PayPal me $10, or you can go to the shop here, and there's also a shop link where you can buy it. You can grab a tarot reading. Everybody who I've given a tarot reading to is very happy with their reading. This really takes you deep in connection with your highest self or your spiritual allies, so that you can get messages that you might otherwise be missing, and you will definitely recognize the truth of it when you get one. So if you are struggling through something and you need some guidance or some help or some clarity, please grab a tarot reading. I would love to offer that to you. In the shop section, you can also purchase a tarot reading. You can get irreverent merch, which is just some fun merch I've created about the coronavirus, and I forgot what else. Oh, right, that science is not dogma. So just some fun t-shirts if you want to, be the roguester in your family and friends' life and kind of not let people forget these interesting things we learn in classes in tarot. Of course, like I said, you could buy a tarot reading. You can get classes that I teach. You can get one-on-one guidance sessions with me without the reading. You can also, like I said, buy that cheaper than ever Sine Curve of Aeons. This book is expensive to print. I'm actually losing money giving it to people for $10, but I just kind of reformatted it a bit, and so I wanted to get these older copies out to people at a steal. And finally, you can also buy the Orgone pendants that I created, which are beautiful pieces of art. They're one of a kind. And then some Rogueways gear. If you love the Rogueways show or logo like I do, then you may want to put it on something that you can have with you at all times. And these are all great ways to support me and the show. So thank you very much to anybody who comes looking at those items. Of course, the best way to support me is through Subscribestar, through a monthly subscription where you support the show more solidly. And I greatly appreciate people who go to Subscribestar and subscribe, even and especially at the $1 level. I know not all of us have a lot of money, but I bet most people listening to Rogueways right now could go support at the $1 level. $1 a month is super cheap, and if enough people did that, then I would never have to beg you for money again. I would really appreciate if you found any value in Rogueways that you go subscribe at the $1 level. And share a value back for value that you have gotten. There are also other levels. Each of them have their own perks. The $55 a month level has the perk of a cheaper tarot reading than you can get otherwise, once a month free to you, in addition to all the other stuff on the site. So that is a pretty good perk as well. So that's there for you to support me, and I appreciate all of you who do so much. Thank you very much. I want to say what's up to people in the chat. We got Biggie Smollett. What's up? We got Jason Gay. Hey. We got Jeff Green. Howdy, Jeff. Susan Babudro. I was going to say Babaduro. Susan Babudro. Thank you. Yes, I'm excited to talk about Anarchy. It was requested a few episodes ago when I was ranting. If you want to see more swearing than you'll ever see from me again, probably, and more righteous indignation and anger, along with very good analysis and assessment, you can go check out the garbage floating to the surface a few episodes ago. And yeah, we talked a little bit about Anarchy. And it was not clear to everyone what Anarchy is, and so we're going to dive into that today. And even if it is clear to you, who knows, it could be an exciting conversation. So, who else we got? We got Sue Finelli in the house. What's up, Sue? We got Matt Bennett. Matt, it's good to see you here. No rulers. That's right, Jeff. It does not mean no leaders. It means no rulers. It literally means no rulers. That is the root of the word. An is without. Archy is like archons, rulers. So without rulers, not without leaders. Chrissy Perez is here. What's up, Chrissy? We got Chad Clemens. Nice to see you, Chad. I think that's who we got over there. You see, I lean back and have to peer around my giant microphone now. Let me try to rearrange this. Maybe it'll be easier. We'll see if that helps. Mateo, did you miss me talking about your article? Dude, if that's the Mateo, your article has gotten so many hits today. I don't know what happened. I love it, though. I hope people keep continuing to check it out. So, you guys, let's start. And I don't remember exactly what I was thinking when I wanted to bring this up at the beginning of the show. And I guess in part I want to make sure people have seen this, heard it, and are spreading it around. So I'm going to throw that over in the chat for you guys. Let me know if the sound works. It never does, but let's find out.
What's up, world? It's your main man,
Anyway, I'll just tell you, if you haven't seen this video yet, this is obviously from the title, you can tell, a former Black Lives Matter Ferguson organizer, Chazil Soons, perhaps, exposes the Democrats, Antifa, BLM, and more. This has been, luckily, making it to some semi-mainstream routes, and I love it because this man has learned what any activist who's true, observant, and honest learns after a time. I learned it with my time working in the Communist Revolutionary Party and other anti-war sort of organizations around that time. Every single organizing meeting I have ever been to has been infiltrated by very obvious plants or cops or whoever. I can't know for sure who they are, but they're very clearly not there to actually support the movement. They're there to either co-opt it, divert it, destroy it, or report on it to their bosses in a secretive way. Surreptitiously, I should say. And so this man was in the Black Lives Movement. He was a leader in that movement. That movement, you can imagine, is somewhat anarchical, which is awesome. And he rescinded his membership in that organization because he started realizing that it was not just being infiltrated by the normal sort of cops and agents and whoever reporting on it, or like I said, just whatever, but also that it was specifically being co-opted and taken over by moneyed interests such as the Democrats. He specifically mentions, I think, Hillary Clinton. He points out, these people don't care about Black people. The reason they're co-opting this movie is because they know that the rage and the sort of emotion of the Black community at the, years of oppression that they've experienced will be very easily controlled and directed. And so, of course, they went in on the slice of that pie to further their own ends. And so he's just describing all of that. He's describing how he started to see it, how it did not actually serve Black communities, and how it was, something we should all consider when we just blindly jump into a group. Again, groupthink. We talked about that a few episodes ago as well. If you want to go check it out, check it out. The groupthink, Death to Groupthink episode is pretty good. Any group is capable of being co-opted and destroyed unless it's purely actually anarchical, which is kind of neat. And so we just want to be aware of it. We want to spread this around. When people say things like, Black Lives Matter movement is like so important, we should all just like follow them without question and support them without question. And, especially if you're white, shut the fuck up and just support them. These types of narratives are very weak. And this is one of the many, many reasons why. Because that organization in itself has already been infiltrated and co-opted. That doesn't mean nothing good could possibly come from it, but it definitely means that we should wonder and we should be careful about supporting such an organization because we don't know what the most powerful people who control these things have in mind for us. But I'm pretty sure it's not what I want for myself, and it's not a good thing. Chrissy points out it's not as grassroots as many think it is. Yeah, it's always interesting when you look at the groups that manage to take off and become nationwide and have a lot of attention, and then all of the many, many hardworking, incredibly awesome community groups that never do. And then you have to wonder why. It's not a matter of whether or not it's worthy of our attention and our support. It is almost always a matter of it serving the agenda. So we have to then wonder what the agenda is. So maybe we'll come back to this and how anarchy may or may not be a good solution for those types of things. We've got Benjamin Crossland in the house as well tonight. He says, aren't definitions to words all based on intent? However, the etymology of words I see are controllers using those meanings, which hides the meaning to the masses with their use of words, in my view. Yeah, the definition of words is very interesting. So when we look at anarchy, and this is part of why... We're going to get into it. How quickly did I have that in here? I don't know. We may be repeating ourselves later, but basically anarchy is used in this very interesting way, just like conspiracy theory. It's been weaponized as a term, and so people will say things when they're trying to describe utter chaos, they'll say it was anarchy. And was it? Was it without rulers? And is that what they meant? No, that's not what they meant. And so why did they say anarchy? Well, at some point, just like conspiracy theory, this word was weaponized in order to change its meaning in the mass mind. It didn't change its meaning actually, but it changed it in the mass mind so that people would stop thinking about anarchy clearly and start thinking about it as just chaos. Who wants this mindless chaos? Nobody wants mindless chaos. Why would you like anarchy? People have actually used this as an argument against me when I'm arguing for anarchy. They've said, well, why don't you just change the name and not call it anarchy, because this is what people think of when you say you like anarchy. They think you're describing absolute chaos. And my point back to them is always, why do you get to completely destroy and abolish an entire rich history of political thought and philosophy just because within the past, I don't know, 50 years or less or something, that word has been, completely and utterly destroyed in its meaning? I don't think we should let go of it. I don't think we should let go of all of the history that is attached to the theory and philosophy behind anarchy. So I keep using the term as it was intended to be used, and I try to correct people when they use it to describe chaos. I try to point out, that's a little dishonest, and perhaps you want to just use the word chaos. It's a rad word in itself. Why wouldn't you want to use it? It's great. So we're starting on this page for so long because this is a book that I highly recommend to people who want to learn more about anarchy. Probably you can find it for free on archive.org or many other places, but just On Anarchism by Noam Chomsky. Again, I said it the last time I brought this up. There's tons of people who think Noam Chomsky is a tool and, controlled opposition or something, and maybe he is, but he writes very well on anarchy, so you can still learn a lot from him no matter where you think he lands on the spectrum of bot people or controlled people or not. But I'm just noticing that has 111 ratings and there's 11 formats, and that kind of caught my eye, and I think Sue will appreciate such things. But anyway, On Anarchism by Noam Chomsky, if you want to do some very intellectual reading on the history of anarchy and the sort of methodology of if you're going to become anarchist or whatnot. What I also want to point out, in case we don't get there very quickly, is that anarchy has nothing to do with destroying other people's property. In fact, that's the opposite of anarchy. So people who are like, anarchy, and run into a protest and start smashing shit are just idiots who have no idea what they're talking about. Here's another really good resource for people who want to learn about anarchy for free. Larkin Rose, another person that I'm sure tons of people are like, he's a shill or whatever, and maybe he is, but he does very good thinking on anarchy. And for free, again, you can buy all this stuff. He also has books you can read. Those are all probably great. I haven't read any of his books, but I have many years ago watched many of his things, and I don't remember them now, but I just remember that they're good. So larkinrose.com is a very good resource. He does talk about taxes, and he also talks about anarchy, and so you can just click on the anti-political part, and it gets to a lot of different aspects of anarchy. And I'm not sure how far back you have to go to really get into anarchy with him, but he also has YouTube videos up the yin yang that you can watch. So those are sources that are way better than me at explaining anarchy and getting into the nitty gritty aspects of it. But we're going to do our best today to at least address the sort of main things that you would need to understand to rid yourself of the illusion that anarchy has anything to do with chaos or violence or destruction. It has nothing to do with any of those things. We've got Andrew Briseno in the house. Noam Chomsky's writings promote centralization of the power of rulers. I disagree from what I've read and watched of him, but again, a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about him, so everyone should come to their own conclusions. And read him or don't, it's totally up to you. Susan is right. Anarchy means no rulers, not no rules. It's a non-aggression principle. Force is never used. And speaking of Susan, here we are on the non-aggression principle. It has its own page. It's a cool page. I just found it today. You can go poking around here if you want. But the non-aggression principle is the center of anarchy, and you'll find, therefore, that anarchy is actually one of the most peaceful paths that you could possibly have. Isn't that interesting that they would color it as the most violent and chaotic path that you could choose, when actually it's the most peaceful and often very, very orderful? So the non-aggression principle is very, very simple. The non-aggression principle is the belief that individuals should be free to act as they choose, with the exception that they may not initiate force or the threat of force against another person or their property. When I first found Larkin Rose, this was what he was talking about, was the non-aggression principle, and this was what I was trying to understand. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, this might be a really good part of what pushed me away from violent revolution. Like the golden rule, the NAP can be a beacon of light to guide us each through the journey of a lifetime. It's pretty simple. It's literally the idea that you are not allowed to force anything on anyone. It's not your job. You don't have that power. God didn't grant you with that authority. Nature didn't grant you with that authority. And there is no law or legality that actually makes it right or moral to force anyone into anything ever. But like the ramifications of choosing to live by the non-aggression principle are profound. You can never have taxes in the non-aggression principle because you're forcing someone to pay you for something that they may or may not agree to. You could never, take someone's property in communism. In a lot of violent revolutions, the idea is that you would seize property from especially the wealthy and the means of production from especially the wealthy, and you would kind of give it back to like the people. Well, that would be forceful, and that would be a violation of the non-aggression principle. And so you would completely do away with all of those ideas in this system. Of course, you're probably already asking yourself, if you're not ever violent, then obviously someone's going to come and be violent to you. And just pay attention to this. It never said that you can't be violent. It said to never use force against someone. Of course, just as you would assume, if someone is bringing force to you, you should definitely defend yourself and your property. It is not okay for anyone to force you into anything. And so if you are defending yourself from force, that might be very violent. You might kill someone. I'm not suggesting you do. I'm just saying this can happen when people are forceful. If someone brings force to you, then you defend yourself. Defense is not aggression. Defense is actually the opposite of aggression. Aggression is when someone brings force to you. You defending against that is your right as a human being, your natural right. So do away with that idea right now. Yes, people will bring violence to you. They've done it my whole life. They've done it to you your whole life. They'll keep doing it whether you're an anarchist or not. And before you ever thought about anarchy, during your thinking about anarchy, and after you're thinking about anarchy, it's always okay to defend yourself. You should always do so, in my opinion. So again, Chris says, sadly in anarchy, there are those who will try to force their will onto you, and then some sort of governance is required. There is no perfect society. However, you do have governance in anarchy. You just don't have government, and you don't have rulers. Just like someone pointed out before, you still have leaders. And you might even organize a community posse to protect your perimeter of your community. And those people might be considered a sort of governance. Those people don't inherently therefore have more power than anyone else in the community, but they do have a role to play. And so again, organization is fine. Choosing to be part of an organization is fine. Choosing in your organization to have rules and to codify things, that's fine. If you consider that to be governance, which I do, that's fine. You're choosing that. You're all choosing that together. Nobody's forcing it on anyone. If you then look at your neighbors who never chose that, never agreed to that, and you go and try to force them into your community and force them to accept your rules, you're no longer an anarchist. Now you're just, practicing the rules of empire. So again, that's a really common misconception that you can't have any sort of organization or groupings or governance. You can. Anarchy does not mean no organization. Again, so I'm kind of skimming over the type of ideas that this article is talking about as you guys are bringing it up in the chat. They're kind of getting at the same types of things that we are talking about. And so you can come read this article and the many articles on this site if you want to understand the non-aggression principle better. I highly recommend you do. And if you have questions in the chat, I can try to answer them. I believe Chris in the chat. I could be wrong, but I believe Chris is an anarchist as well, and so he may also be able to answer things that I miss. I think there's a couple people in the chat. Jason Gay says, voluntarism is the way. Anarchy feels like a term used to demonize. Yeah, voluntarism is a type of anarchy, so it would be a subcategory of anarchy, and it's absolutely awesome. Voluntarism is very similar to the non-aggression principle. It's like a principle used by anarchists. The idea is then again that everyone volunteers to be part of this group. They volunteer for the various roles in the group. Voluntarism, we all do what we choose to. I don't know if I went back too far. Anarchists grow gardens. Yeah, I like it, Benjamin, totally. People think of anarchists as like these wild, like black mass people throwing Molotov cocktails and protests. And again, if you're doing that, you're very clearly not an anarchist, although you might call yourself that because you're too stupid to know better, which is very common with young people. Everyone wants to like scrawl the anarchy sign and like have like punk rock. I'm like, punk rockers? Some of them are anarchists and some are not. It's weird that the two got like conflated, but anyway. Yeah, our true rights come from nature, God, if you want to call it that, whatever you want to call it. Oh, I did go back forth. Private security forces, yeah, you can have them. Have private security forces. You can pay people for it. You can have any kind of economic system you want because you chose it in your community. I'm happy that some people are already seeing anarchy in a new way. That's awesome. Everything I'm telling you at one point, I was like, huh, that's not what? So I'm also I was where you are, or whatever, at one point. Oh, I like that. Chris is pointing out if you did have a private security force in your anarchist community, the businesses who would pay a little bit more for the private police force would sort of subsidize it for the rest of the residents. So it would be like it would keep the cost down. That's an important point. It's interesting to think about right now with all that's going on. And we see a lot of cops standing down for whatever reason. We can go into all kinds of conspiracies there, but we see them standing down. And I keep wondering, like, why aren't people organizing defense for themselves then? If no one else is going to defend you, defend yourself. There's nothing stopping you. It's legal to do so. They might lock you up. There's people who are being arrested for murdering people who came into their businesses looting. And it's like, hopefully that gets cleared up legally and they're not actually punished for that because it's their right to defend. Even in the United States system, not just in an anarchist principled way. So hopefully, we continue to have that right, but we should definitely practice that right because it's our right, whether or not the nation agrees. It's our natural right. So we can make our own private police forces. We can protect our own neighborhoods. That's what the Black Panthers did. It was awesome. That's probably part of why they were so targeted by the government to destroy them, because people starting to do things for themselves is an anarchist principle, and of course it cannot coexist, not in a system that wants complete domination, because it creates independence. So what's up, Gordon Hamill in the chat, and all the people not saying hi? Chris suggests we search Detroit Threat Management on YouTube if you want to learn more about it. It's a great story, I'm guessing, about private police forces. Yeah, and we might get to that. There's a place later where we're going to look at specific examples of anarchy working in the world today in various places. So let's just look at types of governmental anarchy. This is talking about, the way you govern and organize your society as opposed to an economic system, I believe. So philosophical anarchy is one thing. William Godwin, propounded the first type of government anarchy. The philosophical anarchy is rooted in economic and political concepts which state that the state does not have moral legitimacy. It also contends that there is no duty or individual obligations to obey the laws of the state, which invariably means that the state does not have the full right to command its members. These types of government anarchy is said to have originated from individualist anarchism. These types of government anarchy, this last sentence is bad, we'll ignore it. But basically just the idea that there is no legitimate government unless you chose it. You literally chose it freely and choose to continue being a part of it, then maybe it's legitimate for you. But I don't know about you, but most of us were just kind of born into it, and they're like, hey, pay us taxes or we'll kill you. And we're like, oh, I guess I have to do that then. It doesn't seem very fair, but I also don't want to go to jail for the rest of my life. So that's force. That's an example of the use of force. Mutualist anarchism deals with concepts such as credit reform, federation, voluntary contract, free association, or reciprocity. A lot of mutualists are of the opinion that a market without the intervention of the government will ultimately bring the prices of goods and services down. A lot of mutualists are of the opinion that a market that has no government intervention will definitely bring the prices of goods and services down, eliminate interest, rent, and profit. This means that workers will compete favorably over forms. I don't know what over forms means in this sentence. While firms equally compete over workers. Oh, firms. This is just poorly written. I just saw that it had all these types and I liked it. So anyway, we'll try to get through it. Leading to a rise in wages. Some people see these types of government anarchy as a combination of collectivist anarchism and individualist anarchism. Mutualism has equally been classified based on the contest of three philosophies: socialism, capitalism, and communism. It is funny when you look into what supposedly the end state, the end result of socialism, socialist revolutions and socialist governments, communist revolutions and communist governments, the end result of them is anarchy. The end result is that you abolish the government. You have your revolution, you redistribute wealth, you make sure everyone's cared for, you make sure the structures are all still running and in place, and then you slowly get rid of the government. We all know that's never going to happen. It's never happened before, and it's never going to happen. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion, right? There's way too much inertia at that point built in. There's way too much incentive to keep it going at that point. There's no incentive to get people out of government and to destroy government systems once they're in place. So, you know, I could be wrong, but it seems like it's very unlikely to happen. But in ideology, when you read about them, when you look into what the point of them is, the point is to get to a place where you have no government anymore. And that is anarchy. Basically, again, you have governing and you have leaders, and you have rules, but you have no, like, what we think of as a government, controllers who are, like, ruling over you and you have no choice in the matter. You don't have that. So it's just interesting that anarchy is actually the goal of all of those, as far as I'm concerned. If you want to disagree, please tell me why. I would love to hear it. Here, somebody's asking for links. I've shared all the ones so far. There's this one. We've got social anarchism, a broad term which is used to identify different types of government anarchy based on the individualist approach. While an individualistic anarchy stress on rationality and autonomy, the social anarchism emphasizes individual freedom, mutual, and community aid. This is probably closest to what most people talk about in the just flat out definition of sort of what anarchy actually is, this social anarchism. The social type of anarchy describes a tendency within anarchy that emphasizes on the cooperative and communitarian aspects of the anarchy theory. This is like what I was talking about a minute ago, that you would kind of form groups and take care of territories together and have it be completely voluntary without any aggression. There are several types of government anarchy under social anarchism, including social ecology, anarcho-syndicalism, libertarian socialism, anarcho-communism, and communism, and collectivist anarchism. And we're going to go into some of these, and you'll see just how many types of anarchy there are. It's kind of crazy. This is another problem I had when I was in the activist community for so long, is that people divide over anything. Oh, it's just like religion. It's really unfortunate to me because we're obviously stronger together, and we're very, very clearly going to get more done if we just start moving towards what we want instead of endlessly dividing into more and more groups that have just subtly different ideas about how to do things. And that doesn't give me a lot of hope, but I'll tell you what does as we go forward in this. Any form of government, Chris points out, over time will evolve into what we have now. Disappointingly, I kind of agree with you. I think that these anarchist communities that we need to build have to also be exceptionally malleable and changeable and constantly moving, or else they're going to get just as stagnant and just as destructive. But I don't know the future, and I'm not God, so I'm not really sure. So collectivist anarchism. One of the most modern types of government and anarchy, it does not agree with private ownership of property. This is an extreme form of anarchy, but rather a collective ownership. This type of anarchy can be initiated by a fraction of the elite group, I don't know why it says elite, through propaganda or acts of violence. Okay, this is not even anarchism at all. I don't even know what this is describing. Maybe this is just straight up communism. Here, workers will receive compensation for their work based on how much time they put in for the work instead of the anarcho-communism method, which is based on the distribution of goods according to needs met. Oh, yeah, it is a sort of communist-ish version of anarchy. There's a lot of debate about what is and what isn't anarchy, but anytime there's force, it's not anarchy to me. That's just straight up fucking thuggery. Is anarchy devoid of religion? No! That's part of why I like it as well. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You can have whatever beliefs you want. There's no religion involved in the running of a community. There can be. You can, again, your community can choose as anarchists to have a centralized sort of church and service and, you know, rites and rituals or whatever you guys want to do. But you don't have to, and there's nothing in anarchy that demands there is no religion, unlike communism, which does demand that you don't have spirituality or religion, which I still think is just absolutely stunningly insane. But not anarchy, so there's another good thing. I feel like all good communists become anarchists. Egoist anarchism. This was propounded by Max Stirner, who stated that egoist anarchism is a system whereby an individual rejects a system, a doctrine, a good cause, or a great idea. They don't go by the rules, but follow whatever they believe and don't pay heed to how people may fare thereby. Here, the only limitation an individual has is power to gain whatever he wants. This is kind of an interesting take on it, because any anarchist could be, technically, by this definition, egoist. I personally probably am an egoist anarchist. I do what I want all the time. And if it hurts people's feelings or whatever, like, I don't really care at all. I would care if it was going to harm them actually, and I wouldn't therefore do it, probably, depending on what the, you know, weighting was and what we were actually talking about. I'd have to know what the situation was in the hypothetical land, but it's weird to just sort of single that out as something, because this egoist thing could exist in any ism, in any economic and any political system. So that's interesting. This is an interesting article as well. This gets even more technical into the different types of anarchy. Again, anarchy basically is a stateless society. As we've pointed out, that does not mean there's no rules. That does not mean there's no systems put in place. That doesn't mean that people don't have any role that's, you know, a traditional role, that's an assigned role or an assumed role in the community. It doesn't mean you can't have an economic system within your community. It just means that there's no official state. There's no official government. There's no institutions. You might want to think of it that way. Which is just a different way of thinking. People just assume it can't be done, but people also forget that we used to go homestead together in communities, and that was basically anarchy in every meaningful way of the word. That was anarchy. And in every meaningful way of the word, many of us still practice lots of anarchy in our daily lives. They do say it's a far left ideology. I don't agree. I understand why they put it there. If you go by the political spectrum, I wonder if we could find it. The political compass, that it has the 4 quadrants. It is up to the left, I feel. I don't know if you guys have seen this. I'll throw it in there. This is an awesome political test. I love it because it's not just a left-right. It's a 4 axes method of placing things on the... Just give me an example one. I don't want to take the test right now. Come on, guys. Jeez. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Benjamin. It seems more center than anything, or more up, you know, center, maybe, because I think up was the less. I could be getting the directions wrong. I shouldn't even talk, but we'll just pick random. No, I don't want to go through this. Anyway, if I can find, here, I'll image search it. I have my results somewhere too, but I just didn't even think about it. Here we go. So libertarian, okay, down was what I meant. I feel like libertarians essentially are anarchists. Basically, they're like full freedom, right? The non-aggression principle is very libertarian. There's no aspect of anarchy that's authoritarian. I don't see it as left-right because this seems like a fiscal matter here, left and right. You're either loose with your money and feel like it should be used by the government to do kind of anything and everything, or you're like want less of your money to go to the government and think government should be pretty small on the right. So fiscal left right, authoritarian to libertarian up down. So I would put anarchy right in the middle down here at the extreme end towards libertarian. I'm not sure what they do on that political compass test. Did I post it? Yeah, I'm not sure what they do. Somebody'd have to take it and remind me because I forget. But that's what I would say. Anyway, back to here. It does say it's often considered, so it's not like a foregone conclusion that it is a left ideology. What I wanted to get into, because you can come read this if you want. I wanted to go into, first of all, I like that this stemmed from this guy, Pierre, I'm not going to probably get it right, but Pierre Joseph Proudhon, I don't know. That guy's pretty cool if you look into Proudhonian or whatever, anarchy. It's basically this idea of reciprocity, free association, voluntary contract, federation, which is, again, it's not really a state. It's like a loose organization of associated groups that have chosen to be a part of it. I feel like the U.S. was kind of maybe almost headed there, before we really centralized it. And credit and currency reform. I don't know if you guys know much about the movements that try to create currency locally and have just a local currency that you can use, but that's a very anarchist principle. And that money, that value just stays then within the community. Of course, those places in the United States that have done it have often been targeted, both legally and just, with pressure in various forms economically, to make them stop doing it. But there are places in the US that have created their own currency. It is a legal thing to do. Anybody can do it. You can decide that, cans of coconut water are your currency, and no one can stop you. It's all made up anyway, so do whatever you want in your community, Anyway, that guy's those main tenets sort of started the thinking that led to the modern, philosophy of anarchy. So you look at it at its base, like who doesn't agree with these things? Who doesn't agree that we should have reciprocity? Like what you give to your community, you should get, something back from it, and that you should do this involuntary by choice, free association. I don't know. I think it's pretty weird that we don't have more focus on anarchy, but again, of course we don't, because it would free people. It would free you from control. Nobody in the government, nobody with power wants that. Collectivist anarchism, again, we saw that got towards communism, and then we see anarcho-communism, of course. They all have their own colors and flags and stars, and you can get into all kinds of communities if you want to go looking. Individualists anarchy, we talked about all of these in that other article, and egoist anarchism. Okay, sorry, I guess this one wasn't. I guess I just wanted to talk about Proudhon. This was the one that has all the list. No? Still no? You guys, I swear I had this figured out, but I've been working lately a lot. So my brain is like a little bit messed up. A little bit distracted, really. Oh, what was I gonna do here? Wikipedia, tell me the ways. Maybe I was just gonna read the definition. We'll start there at least. Anarchism is a political philosophy and movement that rejects all involuntary, coercive forms of hierarchy. That's another very simple way. Good definition. Rejecting anything involuntary, rejecting anything coercive or forceful, rejecting anything hierarchical. Again, when I was talking about earlier, what I was describing, you can select people, or people can select themselves to become your sort of community patrol. You can select people who are going to be your community teachers. You can select people who are going to be your, business people or whatever you want to do, you can do it, but it is all voluntary. And those people don't automatically have power. They just have a role, you know, they just have a set of tasks and expectations they're supposed to fulfill. And that keeps it from being hierarchical. Anybody can, you know, adopt one of those positions, or they can change in and out of them. And it doesn't give you any more power or less power if that's the way you create it in your community. You can do it however you want. If you avoid that hierarchy and that power, that's a real good start to not having fascism or tyranny take over. I wonder why they say gender, sexuality, and free love are issues in anarchy. I've never heard that. Okay, here we go. Gender and sexuality carry along them dynamics of hierarchy. So that in itself is a pretty loaded assumption and assessment without any evidence supporting it. So that's interesting. I guess this is just asserted and we're supposed to just accept it. I don't, but let's just roll with it for a second. Gender and sexuality carry along them dynamics of hierarchy. Anarchism is obliged to address, analyze, and oppose the suppression of one's autonomy because of the dynamics that gender roles traditionally impose. I'm not necessarily opposed. You know, if women feel oppressed, if gay people feel oppressed, if people of color feel oppressed, or whoever feels disenfranchised by this society, and they're joining in this community of anarchists, and that community wants to choose to address these things, that's rad. That's awesome for that community. I think making it like an issue that you have to address is forceful and is therefore against the basic tenets of anarchy. So I would say that should be up to every individual group's choices. It's a very strange thing to just assert and insert into this discussion. I'm not even saying it's not important. I'm just saying I think it doesn't really belong here. Anarchism and education. The interest of anarchists in education stretches back to the first emergence of classical anarchism. Anarchists consider proper education, which sets the foundations of the future autonomy of the individual and the society, to be an act of mutual aid. Hell yeah, it should be. You just have people who are good at teaching and teach your kids, and you give them stuff for doing it, and everybody's happy. Like, we make things so complicated. Anarchist education is based largely on the idea that a child's right to develop freely without manipulation ought to be respected. Wow, I just realized I'm an anarchist teacher. That's all I ever did, was respect a child's autonomy and freedom without trying to manipulate them. And I got a lot of shit for it, because lots of people think I should have taught them my ideologies and my morals and my ethics, and I didn't, and they did not like that. Really what they meant is I should teach them their morals and ethics, so that's even worse, but whatever. Anarchists consider the state as a tool of domination and believe it to be illegitimate regardless of its political tendencies. So there's no left, right, up, down version of the state that is good. Anarchists oppose the state at all levels because the state is full of rulers. They have all the power and control, and it's not mutual, it's not voluntary, and it's full of force. It is opposed at all ends to the basic tenets of anarchy. Of course, there's going to be criticism. La la la. Let's see what the chat is doing. We see Exactly showed up. What's up, Exactly? We have... I just like to try to skim people's comments too and see. My coconut water is yours, Bob Dylan. It's yours. I'm very communist about my coconut water. I give freely to the needy. I am so glad that me and everyone here are not rioting right now. Thank goodness. We see a little bit more value in people and objects than many people do. Again, you can go watch my epic rant and know exactly how I feel about rioting. It's called The Garbage Floating to the Surface. What's up, Illusion67? Exactly. That is because it's Wikipedia. I know what you're talking about. You're saying that's why the shit about gender and fucking whatever was inserted in there. That's exactly right. Anyone can be oppressed except who they believe is an oppressor. Yeah, Steve Mercer, what's up? Anyone can be oppressed. Everybody I've ever met is oppressed, including rich people. Sorry if that hurts your feelings. Sorry if you haven't hung out with enough rich people to understand a different type of oppression in society. I'm not saying that everybody has various types of privilege. Everybody has various types of oppression. It's crazy to pretend that there is only one group of people who has oppression, or, to try to rank oppressions is interesting. If you want to do it, do it. I think it's a fucking pointless thing to do. I think we're allies, and we should be allies and not just compare like whose wounds are bigger. The Iroquois Indian leadership all had to agree to make a decision. Yeah, that's an interesting thing too, and I don't know if it comes up in any of the things we're looking at tonight, but the idea that you have why did I just forget the name of that? When everyone agrees. Consensus. And like, oh, I hated every meeting I was ever a part of that pretended like we were going to have consensus, because consensus building processes, while they aim to do really well, and they may even sometimes do really well, they often use force. And the force they use is often very subtle, and it's very fucking annoying to pretend. Like, people just start pretending things are true that aren't, and they get their attitudes and fucking egos come out, and it's just annoying. But the idea of consensus is cool. I like it in small groups. Let's say that. I guess if you're going to do an anarchical community, perhaps you have to have a consensus. Maybe that's how it goes, because democracy is inherently forceful. The mob mentality, the mob wins, is inherently forceful. So maybe we had to. Maybe all anarchists have to. Maybe I have to learn how to get over it. I don't know. Maybe I have to learn how to do it better with people. So mutualism specifically is an economic theory within it. So anarchy is not an economic theory. It's a political theory. Mutualism is an economic theory. It goes along with anarchy. This is my understanding, at least. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Just like communism is actually an economic theory, and people conflate it with a governmental system. Governmental system often goes along with communism, and they call it communist state, which is different from communism. So, all these different things that we have to think about. But mutualism is a cool economic theory that is an anarchist economic theory. What's up, Dominic Hawkins in the house? Big love back at you. Chris says, an awesome video to watch about anarchy is called Law Without the State by David Friedman. That sounds very good. We should all go check it out. So mutualism, and basically, is an anarchist school of thought, an economic theory that advocates a socialist society based on the free markets and usufructs. I don't know what usufructs are, i.e. occupation and use of property norms. I guess shared property, and the idea that you're going to use them in specific ways. It's only socialist in the sense that socialism as a theory economically is that, you tend to share with people. If one farm in your community happened to be overrun by plague or something, other people in the community would share that year with that person or whatever. It's not what we're thinking about when we're talking about socialist states. Just to be clear about that. So one implementation of this system involves the establishment of a mutual credit bank that would lend to producers at minimal interest rates just high enough to cover administration. Again, it's like Chris said earlier, once you start establishing these types of things, they very easily could become entrenched. They very easily could develop hierarchical sorts of systems. You could get power differentials, and you could end up having forms of forcefulness. And so you just would have to be ever vigilant and very careful in creating and administering these types of things. But it's nice that people have thought out ways that we can actually still have things like banks, and loans, and money trading and taking care of each other in these things. Sorry if I was just coughing into everybody's face. I think I have allergies or something. Oh, it came from our friend. Jesus. Proudhone or whatever, that guy. Sorry, I have this nerve thing. I have a lot of nerve damage in my body, and it manifests in various ways, and right now it's manifesting as feeling like bugs are crawling all over my legs, and it's really disconcerting, but it's gonna be okay. So mutualism is just a method of economic system that can work for anarchists. You can look deeper into it. It's fascinating. You can do it or not do it. If you're going to do an anarchist sort of community, you can kind of do whatever you want. That's kind of the point. It's pretty cool. Oh, I like this. So this is getting to the point where people have this idea that anarchy is chaos. And, oh, Biggie points out it's no usury was the usufruct's word, which I could have hovered over and seen, huh? A limited real right found in civil law in mixed jurisdictions that unites the two property interests of usus and fructus. The right to use or enjoy a thing possessed directly and without altering it, and the right to derive profit from it. That seems opposite of no usury. Isn't usury, oh man. Now I'm going to look up usury. Usury is the practice of making unethical or immoral monetary loans and unfairly rich. Oh, okay. So you can make money, just can't be unfair or illegal. It's interesting. I've brought it up before on the show, but in Islamic tradition, you can't have interest. But then someone pointed out that, because when I was in Islamic countries, when I was living in Turkey and when I was living in Bahrain, that I found out that banks there couldn't charge interest on loans, and I was like, what? Like, that's crazy. But then I found out that they charge all kinds of fees and other things that they kind of like get around it, so I guess it like defeats the purpose. But it's still cool that that religion tried to address this problem. And another thing that's cool, while on the topic of mutualism, there was, if you remember, the Occupy movement before it got co-opted and infiltrated and destroyed. They did the Rolling Jubilee, and the Rolling Jubilee was a very anarchist economic movement where you would donate. So I donated, I don't know, like $100, let's say, and all these people all over the country were donating all this money, and they took all that money and they bought loan, like a loan shark, like a money, whatever, like a collections agency. They'd buy loans, which are hella cheap. They're like pennies on the dollar, and then they just forgive it. And so all these people got all their loans forgiven by the Rolling Jubilee, which I don't know why it stopped. Maybe it didn't. Here, let's look it up. Oh my God, it's still going. Oh, maybe it's not. Oh, it is. Wow, $701,000 they've raised and abolished 31 million. Almost $32 million of debt. So rad. All right, I'll throw this into the chat too. You may want to research it and make sure it's still like legit. But like, I think this is an awesome way to end the unfair predatory land. I'm not opposed to people lending and making like a little bit of money back or whatever. I just think there's a lot of unfair practices that go along with banking. So I think that's a cool thing to look into. Some of us call that an itch. No, it's a bit different from an itch. It's like a nerve damage issue, but I totally get what you're saying. Proudhon with a French accent. Proudhon, perhaps. Yeah, that is so rad. I do love the Rolling Jubilee. It's really, really fucking cool. So this is just a really short, really cool analysis. It's true. Anarchy is chaos. It's under TV tropes. We know that we are programmed in this way by media. It says a virtually ubiquitous trope, both in fiction and real life, is the misconception that anarchists have no beliefs, that anarchy is chaos. While anarchy and chaos are not mutually exclusive, chaos is anarchic, although it often devolves into despotism, but anarchy is not necessarily chaotic. Such an un-mindset is properly called nihilism, the belief in nothing. However, the actual definition of anarchism is the belief that rulership should not exist, as indicated in its Greek roots, and archos, as we went into before. And meaning no or without, and archos meaning ruler. There is much division on the extent and nature of rulership and what it means. So, so they just go into this is a clear media trope. It happens over and over again, and this is how people have been programmed to associate anarchy with chaos, when actually anarchy is often very, very orderly and is essentially peaceful at its roots. Should add this at the beginning. You can perhaps forgive me. Oops, that's not what I want to copy. I want to copy this. And we have Eerie Fairy, what's up? Thank you for liking and sharing. I appreciate that. Speaking of, I don't know why. People often ask me, can I share your video? Like, please do. Yes, that is the point. Please share it. If any of the videos I do you like, please share them. Get as many people as you can to watch them. The whole point is to share ideas and knowledge and, get it out there as much as possible. So please share it. Do like the video if you are enjoying it so far. Please subscribe if you're watching and haven't yet. If you're on DLive or Facebook and you want to hop over to YouTube just to subscribe or like and share, that would be cool too. All those things are greatly appreciated. But nice to see you, Eerie Fairy, and thanks for that reminder. We have Sencha T in the house as well. What's up, Sencha T? And Chris points out, real anarchy is spontaneous order. Yeah. I love that. It's almost opposite of what people think. Look up the term spontaneous order. All right. Oh, should I actually do that right now? Let's see. Spontaneous order. Spontaneous order, also named self-organization in the hard sciences, is the spontaneous emergence of order out of seeming chaos. It is a process in social networks, including economics, though the term self-organization is more often used for physical changes and biological processes, while spontaneous order is typically used to describe the emergence of various kinds of social orders from a combination of self-interested individuals who are not intentionally trying to create order through planning. So some protests do have spontaneous order happening, which is anarchy. So that's really interesting. I love this. Thank you. Was that Chris who shared this idea? Chad. Chad shared this idea. No, Chris did. Whatever. Chris and Chad are both awesome. I think Chris shared it, but that's cool. Thank you. Let's bring it over here. So yeah, the TV has trained us to think otherwise, to think it's chaotic and horrifying and, that like nothing good could come of anarchy, and in fact some of the best shit I think ever could come from anarchy. And I think as I often suggest, I don't call it anarchy while I'm suggesting it very often, but I almost always, if I give you guys any suggestions or my opinion on what people like should do in life, it's always anarchist. It's always anarchal at heart. So this is a list of anarchist communities, which is really interesting because a lot of people, when you get to the point where you're like, actually anarchy is like this and actually it's different from what you think, then people are like, well, it's like that's impossible to pull off. Actually, tons of people have done it all over the place, and tons of people are doing it right now. You are doing it right now in various ways you don't understand, like we said earlier. This one was cool, but let's just look at a few. We'll just see how many there are, right? It's cool. It's a cool list because it tells you which societies there are. It tells you since when have they existed and their duration. So the oldest one they've listed here, which might not even be the oldest anarchist group in the world, very clearly there could be some that aren't even on this list and that no one knows about or thinks of as anarchists. There could be communities out there right now who are super anarchists and don't even know it. Very possible, very likely, in fact. So, but this one, 61 years and 209 days. Fuck yeah, it's fucking awesome. See, someone asked earlier, can you have, religion and stuff? Yeah, this one is specifically Buddhist. And Gandhism isn't a religion. It's just the philosophy of Gandhi being applied. But still, it's pretty cool. It's interesting. We have some actually named, after their roots. Exarchia, a neighborhood in central Athens, Greece. Close to the historical building of the National Technical University of Athens, the district took its name from a 19th century businessman named Exarchos who opened a large general store there. Blah, blah, blah. So they are apparently anarchist, 46 years. Federation of Neighborhood Councils, 40 years. See, it's as simple as that. Have some neighborhood councils and have a federation of them. You can even start influencing our political system here today by doing things like this right now, right here. You don't have to rip down what exists in order to be an anarchist at all. In fact, there's no part of it that requires that ever. In fact, if you were a really good anarchist, you would just practice anarchy for the rest of your life and you would influence others to do so as well. And eventually so many people would be doing it because it's such a fucking rad and good idea that it would just be the thing that people did, and we would no longer have a government because we wouldn't need it. We would no longer use it. Eventually enough people would be like, yeah, no, we're just not even going to support you at all anymore. and it would wither away and die. But perhaps not without great attempts at infiltration and destruction and violence. Who knows? You know, they like to do that. I sometimes think things like, what are they called? The Branch Davidians or whatever, the Waco people. I often think perhaps they were like too anarchist for the government to handle their continued success, and so they had to destroy them. But anyway, there's a bunch of these still going, right? These are the ones in this top section, active societies. There's a bunch that did exist and then, you know, for whatever reason, were destroyed or fell apart or dispersed. The Essenes, Gnostic group. That's pretty interesting that they're on here. There's so many. You can go through these and they're fun to just look at. The Paris Commune, of course, is on here. So many. So I just wanted to look at one so people could get an idea of the, you know, types of groups that could be considered anarchists. So these guys are from Sri Lanka. This is the I'm going to obviously butcher this. The Sarvodaya Shramadana movement. I say that just like such the whitest white girl ever. They're an organization that works with local villages, and they provide sort of, like it says, conflict resolution programs to villages. They also provide all kinds of infrastructure building and kind of self-governance development and training and stuff. They're a pretty cool organization from what I'm reading here. But it's also interesting, it's the largest indigenous organization working in reconstruction from the tsunami back in 2004. Oh God, just horrible destruction there. But it was founded in 1958 when he took 40 high school students and 12 teachers from Nalanda College, Colombo, on an educational experiment to an outcast village. So, of course, in India, we know they have, or in these, sorry, I should say not India, but in these areas, they have often caste systems. And so there's entire groups of people who like shouldn't be touched or whatever. I'm clearly pretty ignorant about it, but you know, the people at the bottom there, those caste systems, they went out and they tried to promote, you know, good things, health, connectedness, education out in these places. And that developed into this ongoing group of people that did this. So it's by choice that you join. It's by choice that the communities they go to have chosen to have them there. It's all without any force, and it is all focused on community development, which is also a central tenet of anarchists. But I like they have this sort of like communist socialist economic thing going on where they distribute funds from the financial reserve bank, which they just make enough to keep the administration, just like we saw in mutualism. So they use a lot of the various tenets of anarchy to organize and run their stuff. I like they have identified 10 basic needs that they would like to help the communities that choose to have them show up develop, like clean environment, an adequate supply of water, clothing, food, shelter, healthcare, communication, fuel, access to education, cultural and spiritual performance. Again, we see the spiritual is not discounted from anarchist traditions and workings. Anyway, there's just one, you know, example. Let's pick another random one to look at real quick. Zone to defend. Ooh, I like that. Let's check this one out. The zone to defend. This is in France. A neologism is a relatively recent or isolated term. Oh, okay. So zone to defend is a recent term. Used to refer to a militant occupation that is intended to physically blockade a development project. Oh, that's cool. I don't know if that would be considered force or not. What do you guys think? They're organized particularly in areas with an ecological or agricultural dimension, notably in the permanent blockade village which helped to defeat the Aéroport du Grand Ouest, a proposed airport in Notre-Dame-des-Landes, north of Nantes. However, the name has also been used by occupations in urban areas, for example in Rouen and I'll stop now. One of the movement's first slogans was "Zad everywhere." And though there are no official figures, in early 2016, there were estimated to have been between 10 and 15 Zads across France. So they're kind of like eco-warriors. I guess it's not force. I don't know. That's interesting. You're occupying probably property that is not your own, but you're not necessarily forcing anyone to do anything. Like, they can still come bulldoze you if they want, I guess. I don't know. That's very interesting. It's like borders on the non-aggression principle as far as I understand it. I like their pizzazz. I like their zeal. I like this structure. That's awesome. Kind of want to live there. I know. It's ridiculous. What are you guys saying over here? You both get credit for spontaneous order. Good. Chad and Chris both get credit for spontaneous order. Oh, good idea. Good example, Chris. Chris says, a good example of spontaneous order that I like to give is to imagine an ice skating rink in Central Park with 300 people. No one crashes. Each individual processes the info and chooses where to go, but it's organized. Now imagine one government bureaucrat trying to direct all 300 people where to go. Very, very good example of anarchy. We do anarchy all day, every day, and we never, ever consider it. We're going to go into some examples at the end. How that make you an anarchist, even though you never knew. Benjamin says, I'm at a point of voting for magic words like governor, senator, president is taking something away from me. Working on self-organizing, spontaneous order. Need all the help I can get. All of us do, Benjamin. We really, really should be focused, I think, on creating these communities where we can take care of each other. And start to do away with our reliance on government. Because that's the way it used to be. We used to be more anarchists and didn't even know it. And we lost a lot of our community groups over time. They were just replaced, I think, with ever more work. We were expected to work more and more and more. And ever less and ever more, I should say, commuting, and ever less time to ourselves. And the man and the woman in the traditional family structure then had to work, and so not even the woman could be in like different clubs and community organizations. That was kind of, a woman's role for a while, was you take care of the house and you take care of your kids and stuff, and then you also go join community groups and take care of the community, and while the guys win in the bread or whatever. And I don't care about traditional roles, do them or don't, it's up to you, I don't care. But it is interesting that in destroying that, we lost a lot of community as well, which I'm sure is totally intentional. At the very least, it's incidental and awful, but it's probably intentional. So this is fun because there's a lot of examples that may make you an anarchist that you did not know that you were one. If there's a line to get on a crowded bus, do you wait your turn and refrain from elbowing your way past others in the absence of police? Yeah, you probably do. Most people do. That's anarchy. No one's ruling you in that moment. No one is forcing you to do that. Let's be honest, if you did elbow your way in and get on, like, some people might grumble, but no one's probably going to call the cops. So it's not even the threat of force that's stopping you. It's just that you have spontaneously created that order because you know that that's what people need and that you're freely capable of providing it and you don't mind doing it. All of the behaviors that you choose to do that like kind of keeps functional order and community, lubrication going are kind of anarchist at heart. No one's forcing you to do it. You're choosing. It's voluntary. Are you a member of a club or a sports team or any other voluntary organization where decisions are not imposed by one leader but made on the basis of general consent? This is Eyes Open. If you're in Eyes Open, you're an anarchist. I've intentionally tried to run it as close to anarchy as I can. I am technically like the leader, but I'm not the ruler. And anyone in the group long enough will know that I ask everybody in the group what I should do or not do, because I don't think of it as my group. I think of it as our group, and I think of us as a community. And I think that we all have a role to play in deciding what happens to our community. So hopefully it can stay that way as it gets bigger. But it is a pretty cool process to have seen taking place, and I think everyone in there, if they're listening now, can agree that it's a very anarchical sort of organization. Freely chosen, freely associated, no force involved, and no rulers. Let's look. Chris says, a cool image to check out is Spending Quadrant. I don't know if you're telling me these things or everyone, Chris, but I'm just going. The spending quadrant. I don't know which one to choose. I'm going to choose this one. I hope this is what you mean. Let me know if it's not. Let me put myself here. No. Let me make myself smaller for a minute. Yes. Okay, so spending quadrant. Important things that are also urgent will require the most money. I don't know. I guess I don't know how to interpret this chart, and you probably weren't talking to me anyway, so I'm not sure. Let's see. Fires, crises, emergencies, pressing problems, and deadlines are all urgent and important. If it's not urgent but important, it's over here in the upper right, and it's prevention and preparation, relationship building, long-term planning, creating new opportunities, and exercising and self-care. I feel like I'm focused on the not urgent, important things in life. Because these are all the things I tend to create throughout my life. Prevention and preparation, relationship building, long-term planning, and creating new opportunities. And I try for exercise and self-care. Not this one? Oh, my bad. Well, it's kind of a fun chart. Anyway, what's urgent and not important? Interruptions, distractions, phone calls, emails. Oh, this is just for like personal preferential planning and I guess organizing your life. Not urgent and not important. Trivial and busy work, pleasant time, but wasting some calls and emails. That's like all of school. It's trivial and busy work. Pleasant, but time wasting. Oh, you're good. It's Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman. Here we go. Maybe this is it. 4 ways we can spend money. We've got, oh God. Now I just messed up my whole thing. I think I just fixed it. Anyway, you can spend your own money on yourself. You can spend somebody else's money on yourself. You can spend your own money on somebody else, and you can spend somebody else's money on somebody else. I think the easiest is to spend somebody else's money on yourself or someone else. To spend your own money on yourself and other people is probably the hardest. You're probably saying that government, of course, is spending other people's money on themselves and someone else. And therefore they have no incentive to either create more money or spend it wisely. That was a fun side shoot. Let's look at more examples of how you are an anarchist. Do you believe that most politicians are selfish, egotistical swine who don't really care about the public interest? Do you think we live in an economic system which is stupid and unfair? I don't know anyone who doesn't think this. That's not true. I know there are people who really do think that a lot of politicians are not selfish or egotistical swine and do care about the public interest, and I'm sure there are some. I'm positive there are. There's always, even if it's a rule, there's always exceptions to the rule, and there's always going to be, the bell curve. There's going to be people who are totally in disingenuous, people who are completely totally committed and really believe in everything they're doing, and then people all throughout the middle. So but I think a lot of people recognize that most politicians are selfish and egotistical swine, and that the system is stupid and unfair. And so those people tend to probably agree with anarchy more so than they would have thought, because it's a system that is completely fair. And there are no politicians, and there are no rulers. So that's neat. A lot of people have never asked themselves, do you really believe those things you tell your children or that your parents told you? Right? If you believe those things, such as the golden rule, 2 wrongs don't make a right, clean up your own mess, do unto others as you would like done unto you, etc., then these are all things that anarchy takes to heart and makes as basic principles to organization and association. Do you believe that human beings are fundamentally corrupt and evil? Or that certain sorts of people, women, people of color, ordinary folk who are not rich or highly educated are inferior specimens destined to be ruled by their betters? Probably not. Most people don't. Most people I know don't think either of those things are true. And if you don't, you might be an anarchist. We believe basically that people are not fundamentally corrupted or evil, that people are in situations that are pretty corrupt and evil, and they might therefore behave in ways that are very atrocious. I don't know, such as burning down apartment buildings because someone somewhere killed someone. And I don't know anyone who believes that people are better or worse than other people, except that the people who are in power and have that sort of status in the hierarchy might like tell themselves they're actually better than the people below them in order to justify it. But basically, people who don't agree with those things are going to be anarchists. Anarchists believe all people are equal. No one should rule over you. You're not inferior. You're not corrupt or evil. And that you have the ability to create communities and structures that serve you and your neighbors well, accurately, and, you know, independently and better than anyone else could, because no one else is there with you where you're at in your situation facing what you face. Steve says, Larkin was on the Friday Farcast last week. Should check his work. He'd be a good show. I would love to. I was talking about him earlier. He's amazing. I think I've asked him and he just ignores me. Steve, if you've got the in, please let me know. I would love to beg Larkin Rose to come on this show. I have been a fan for years. Chris, am I allowed to post links? I don't know why, but YouTube won't let you. But if you kind of like space it out and like type out dot and type out other things, you know, in different ways, you might be able to get through it. I'm not sure. Larkin avoids Rogue like the plague. But yeah, I don't know why he won't respond. I think people just don't trust. They're like, I don't know, you're some shitty small show. Why should I come on your show? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm rad. The show's rad. They just don't know, man. We need more people to tell them. Steve, go tell him. So, I just want to go back to this rioting thing. You know, again, the Black Panthers were essentially an anarchist organization. I think they considered themselves, you know, somewhat communist, very revolutionary, and again, the ideology of communism ends in anarchism, and also the actions that they took in organizing their communities and patrolling their communities, taking care of their communities, you know, handing out goods and services in their communities that were needed, building their communities and making them stronger. That level of self-responsibility and you know, responsibility for the people around you in your community, when you're good enough in yourself that you can then go out and give to that community, like that's exactly what a strong person would do in the face of watching their community crumble under other pressures that you are not capable of stopping yet. You are capable of building your own corollary parallel system. And they did it without hierarchy and without rulers. They had great leaders. They had very charismatic, effective leaders. But those people were not the rulers. Nobody necessarily voted for them, just like a really good ruler shouldn't be. A really good ruler should just emerge, just like we were talking about spontaneous organization or whatever it was called. You know, this should just happen because that person just happens in that moment to be embodying the characteristics that you need in this moment. That's what a true leader is, and that's what a true leader does. And the weakest and worst people among us right now are cheering on destruction instead. And that's the opposite of what a good leader does. A good leader does not encourage people to go around destroying other people's shit. If you look at what's happening in this chaos that's all around us, that's not anarchy. That's just chaos and destruction. That's just weak people making poor decisions, possibly because agent provocateurs are encouraging them to do so, possibly because bricks are being dropped off by, I don't know, Bill Gates or George Soros in the middle of cities so that people have tools with which to fight and destroy. There's all kinds of reasons why people are falling into this trap. But if you were a very strong person and you had not, you know, blamed other people for your problems, and, you know, again, there might actually be other people who are to blame for your problems, but it doesn't accomplish anything, you know. And if instead you mobilize all that passion and energy into organizing for your community to improve your community, just like great leaders in the past have done, we wouldn't be seeing all this destruction. We would in fact be seeing huge amounts of beautiful communities forming and flowering right now in this time, and it would be amazing. It would be so awesome. But again, like I said in that rant, the garbage floating to the surface, that's not, You know, that's not what people are doing. People are not thinking things through, not planning things out, and they're just reacting in emotion. And that's what makes you weak, and that's what makes you the worst. When you spew your internal emotional world out into the rest of us, that is forceful, and that is violent, and that is against the anarchal principles of nonviolence and non-aggression. Again, violence is acceptable if you're defending someone, but people are being murdered. There's people who are just saying, like, hey, why are you guys doing that? And then punch and kick and kill. Let's kill this person who doesn't agree with us right now. It's not good. It's not constructive. It's not anarchist. It's not going to help you. It's not anything. All it is senseless, dark, destructive weakness. It's awful. I could go on for hours. Hours and hours. Let's see. There's something cool happening in the chat here, but I'm not sure. Chris met Larkin at Porkfest. I heard about Porkfest. It sounds really rad. Porcupine Freedom Festival. Yeah, tell him to come on Rogue Ways, Chris. Go find him. A different Lark. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know Lark. My bad. We're all excited about Lark and Rose up in here. Okay, anybody listening, if you know how to contact Lark and Rose, let us know. And whoever Lark is, you're probably cool too. And you probably also would be cool on Rogue. I have no idea who you are. Crypto BTC Anarchist, Crypto Bitcoin Anarchist says, the United Nations New World Order Project is a global high-level initiative founded in 2008 to advance a new economic paradigm, a new political order, and more broadly, a new world order for humankind, which achieves the UN's global goals for sustainable development by 2030 and the happiness, well-being, and freedom of all life on Earth by 2050. Yeah, it's a hoax. Yeah, it's a big fat lie, and they're destroying the world in order to get their complete control and domination over the entirety of the world. And it's just, it sounds so nice, doesn't it? It's the opposite of anarchy. It's absolutely the opposite of anarchy. It's forceful, it's full of government and bureaucracy, and it disenfranchises people and ruins communities. We should all resist that. Yeah, it must be crypto's first time here, because we're all with you, crypto. You don't have to tell us. Illusion 67 says it proves most of the world is not mature enough for anarchy yet. Yeah, no, I don't think they are, but I think those of us that are should start practicing it and showing people what it is, because the more people who see it, the more people who will become mature enough to handle it when they see another way. Because, I mean, let's face it, the people who are doing this are doing it because they're desperate and don't see any other way out. Even if they're people who seem very opportunistic people are also people who are desperate and don't see any other way out, as far as I'm concerned, for the most part. And so, you know, there's something these people are sorely lacking. And that's what is allowing them to make these choices that are so destructive and ill-advised and just completely thoughtless. What is PTB? I don't know. I don't know what that means, so I'm not sure. So I did want to show this example of anarchy, of spontaneous, spontaneous order forming. And that's this group of young men, I don't know if they're young, whatever, young people of color, young black men, who joined arms in order to protect this lone police officer behind them. In the midst of a riot, in the midst of people who were going to, you know, presumably rush him and maybe kill him. And this is also anarchy. Anarchy is definitely, you know, supporting this officer's right to self-determination. They're supporting a non-aggression principle by trying to prevent aggression. And they have chosen to do this freely, I assume. And so this is a beautiful moment of anarchy happening right here. And I like to highlight this to point out, A, the media is probably not going to cover it because it's a positive spin on what's happening. And B, it's just good to keep in mind that not all is lost. We don't only see the weakest and the dumbest and the, you know, least capable amongst us seeming to run our cities right now, we also see people who remember what it is to be human, remember what communities need, and remember how to join together in order to accomplish things that otherwise might seem impossible to accomplish. So I want to focus on a little bit of hope there for a moment. There are killers in the crowd and they don't care what you think. Absolutely. If I were going to go into this crowd, I would have a gun and still be scared. People are being murdered. It's crazy. And I want to remind everyone that you are most powerful in yourself when you are beyond all divisions. When you can detach from sides, you're not a Democrat or a Republican, you're a human being. You can detach from age. You're not, 38 or 18 or whatever. You're a human fucking being. When you can detach from your race, yeah, you have one. I'm, have white skin and my ethnicity is very mixed. But that's not who I am. It's part of my experience and that's it. And it's also, as I pointed out in another place, a tool used to divide us. So especially if you attach to it too deeply, you're going to be really easily used as the tool that you are. When you detach from your country, you realize you can love your country and support your country, and you can work towards making your country a better place, even as an anarchist that is hoping that your government is abolished someday. But when you identify with it, then again, you become a pawn to be used. You become a sword to be thrown at someone else's face. You become a weapon, and you become someone that apparently has an identity but has no independent identity or no sense of actual self. So you detach from your country identity. When you detach from your religious identity, have a religion, practice it, be a spiritual person. But when you make that a part of who you actually are, again, you can be leveled against any target. You just become a weapon. You can say, I tell people all the time, you could consider me a Christian because I aim to be Christ-like, but I would not ever just take a church and have them tell me what to do. I don't go to church even, I encourage people who want to go to church, have your religion, but you always stay independent from the church. If the church tells you to do something and it doesn't match your soul and your morality, don't do it. You're more powerful beyond that division. And your sexuality. Have sex with whatever consenting adult you want to have sex with, always. But if that is who you are, then again, you can be pushed into a group, identified, and you can be thrown at a target. And that's what we see happening right now. We see people who identify mostly with the color of their skin being used as weapons against one another. And I'm not saying it's bad to know you're black or white or, yellow or whatever color you are, and to know what your ethnic heritage is and to celebrate it, to know the oppression that your ancestors faced and to see how some aspects of that still exist today, to point at those aspects and try to fix them, to fix the injustices, all of that, do it. But when you over-identify with just that aspect of yourself, such a shallow, minimal aspect of your entirety of your being and your soul, then you're a weapon and you're going to be used against other people in groups. And it's going to be disgusting. Act as an individual. Act as an independent person. Remember that you are beyond all those divisions. That is the place of the most power that you can access as a human being. Oh, sorry that you couldn't read all that. I'm real bad at that. Real good at covering up part of what you want to read. Strive to be sovereign. That's right. Interesting. The Benjamin says, I see the future crumbling first with things that are the furthest from self. The WHO, the UN, the World Bank, the global everything. Anarchy will be forced. You may as well get used to it. Anarchy will never be forced. Anarchy is against force. If it's being forced, it's not anarchy. But whatever chaos may be forced, and out of chaos they hope to build order, as we know. Ab order chaos, or whatever that Latin phrase is. Lark Voorhees from Saved by the Bell. I still don't know who we're talking about. Sorry. What I really love is thinking about people listening to this rather than watching it, and they're probably really upset every time I randomly switch directions in the middle of a sentence. They're like, what the hell are you talking about, Lindsay? And then they're like, oh, she's talking in the chat. Or oh, she just went off on a random tangent. Um, okay, now Lark Voorhees is really messed up. Dude, I don't even know. I'm going to stop. I'm going to research Lark Voorhees after the fact and figure out what we're talking about. But yeah, anyway, back to Benjamin's point. Again, anarchy won't be forced on you. These things, the WHO, the UN, the World Bank, the globalists, the systems they have in place, they're very much not anarchists. They're very much, they seem to be communist and socialist states, not communist and socialist ideologies. And not even necessarily their economies either, but it's interesting too that they basically will guarantee that you have almost no choice and almost no freedom and almost no individuality. And so all of these identity things that we're playing at that are feeding into and becoming weapons that these globalists are using to destroy the society we do have, you know, those things feel to us like their independence and freedom. Like, I am a like gay black female, and you're like, cool, but like when you overly attach to that, you're the weapon being used to destroy what we have. Not always, but basically identity politics are basically being leveraged in this way in our political situation right now. So it is ironic. It's ironic that these aspects of identity are going to be the thing that takes away our real identity, which is our individuality and our self and our freedom. But yeah, anarchy, you know, it's basically this radical notion that other people are not your property. And that is why you can't force them to do anything, because all you can do is force yourself to do something. And everything else should be voluntary association and spontaneous order. And if it's not that, then it is ethically, morally wrong. Again, I'm sorry, I'm covering it up. There you go. This radical idea that other people are not your property. And so we want to follow that to its logical end and know that therefore government is inherently wrong. Other people are property in government. Other people can be forced into any situation in government. People can be forced into jail. People can lose their life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for, I don't know, smoking a plant that grows in the wild, and things like this. So anarchy is really the only true way forward as far as I'm concerned. It is the only ethical way forward. And again, everyone I know are actual anarchists. They just don't necessarily know it because most people don't really understand anarchy. So how do you start building anarchy? Well, I want you to actually read this one. So I'm going to try not to cover it up with my face. Lisa Turtle. What? Lisa the black girl? Oh, her name is Lark Voorhees, and she was on some show, and she's all messed up. Well, now I'm intrigued. I don't know how that has anything to do with anarchy, but it's intriguing. All right, so how do you start practicing anarchy in your life? Well, as all things, if you want to start, you start exactly where you are. You always, no matter what you're doing, you always clean your own house first, right? Before you go cleaning the yard or the rest of the neighborhood or whatever, you start where you're at. You clean your own house first. So you begin to act without rulers. You do not rule over anybody else. This includes children if you're a parent, and that's pretty difficult for people who haven't thought about it before. You have to get to the point where the way that you parent, respects and honors your child's self-determination. And obviously we can do a whole show on parenting and anarchy. And there's clearly times where you have to like grab your kid away from a hot fire or something. And that might be forceful for a second, but you try to be as close to this as possible, which includes your child being able to say like, don't touch me. I don't want to hug right now. And you don't touch them because that's their right to self-determination. And you have the non-aggression principle in mind. So literally you start by applying this to your relationships that you already have. Again, I kind of went into as a teacher that I tried as hard as I can in a system that doesn't really work with these principles to be an anarchist teacher. And I think I did pretty okay. It definitely was very empowering for many of my students, and they appreciated that a lot. I didn't call it anarchy. You don't even have to. You can do it if you want. You don't have to if you don't want to. Sometimes it's better not to. But you can start applying this wherever you are, in whatever relationships you already have. And you begin to act without rulers as well. I don't do anything, and you might be this way too when you really think about it and get down to it, but I don't do things because my government told me they're illegal or legal. I do things because I've decided that they're right or wrong for me. And I said this before I ever knew what anarchy was. I've been saying this since I was a child, because at some point I realized, like, I don't not kill people because the government said not to kill people. I don't kill people because I think it'd be fucked up to kill people. You know, like, I cross the street wherever the fuck I want to cross the street because it's convenient for me to cross the street. I don't do it just because there's a crosswalk and that's where I'm, like, allowed to or whatever. To some extent, obviously, like, I try not to speed so I don't get a ticket. You know, I try to, like, avoid getting into trouble in the system. But when it came down to it, if I thought it was unethical, even if it was the law, I wouldn't do it. And so that's really freeing to realize that you don't really have rulers. I don't really have rulers. I have people who will tell me they're my rulers and possibly jail me and kill me for not following their rules. But in my heart, my soul, I act in my own authority, and that's the only authority that I respect and honor. So you can also start to ask yourself those questions and see if you're already doing that, or maybe you want to think harder about it. Like, are there things that I do that are actually against my, you know, morals and values that maybe I could stop doing and live, like, a little bit more anarchically. And that would be a great way to start. And then you aimed, of course, to organize and create systems and divide responsibilities in your community around you. You can do this tomorrow. I've been preaching this for as long as you've known me, and longer than that even. And, you know, I don't do that on accident. Everything I do is pretty intentional and well thought out. And I do that because that is anarchy and because I support it. I often encourage people to take care of themselves enough that they can then go help take care of others. I often encourage people to go talk to their neighbors. I often encourage people to, you know, if you see a need in your community, create the answer to it. Go out and say, oh, you know, it turns out that people in my community don't have a lot of fathers, so I'm going to get together the guys that I know who are stable, and we're going to see if anybody wants to just hang out with us, you know, some kids who don't have dads or whatever. That's what a lot of communities do, these types of things, and it only makes things better. So you can do that wherever you are and start to save the fucking world. Most importantly, however, you follow these principles. You do not aggress upon others. You do not force anyone into anything, ever. You're basically all forms of force you can think of, like rape. That includes, like, pressuring people and bullying people. That's a form of force. That includes, like, guilt trips and stuff. That's a form of force. So it can get really subtle, but you try to apply as many of these aspects and as many levels of your being as possible. And it's amazing what kinds of transformations you'll see. You use compassionate logic in every situation you come to. You know that other people are suffering because the systems have all failed them. And so you try to imagine, logically what's going on here and how can we all work together to better this situation? Because you can't just blame people for how shit is. You have to get to the point where you take responsibility for it and stand up and just do something about it. It's not fair, but that's what it is. And of course, violence is not disallowed in anarchy. It's just a last resort, and it's only as a response to aggression from others. So we've talked about this a bit on the show as well. I always say, I'm not going to be violent towards people. I'm going to, what am I trying to say? I'm not going to be violent towards people ever, unless they're aggressing upon me. And one of my lines that I consider a severe form of aggression in which I would be violent in response to would be trying to force me to take a vaccine, for example. I would respond to that with aggression, with defense, with severe defense, and that might be deadly, because I find that to be incredibly aggressive and invasive. So you can defend yourself for sure. You just don't go forcing. If force comes to you, you defend yourself. Whoops. Oh, I thought I had another ending slide, and I don't. We're done, folks. We're done. Man, I don't know how. Every time I'm like, this is going to be like half an hour, and every time it's like 2 hours. It's crazy. It's just because I have too much fun with you guys. I'm going to check out some quotes before we wrap it up. Peaceful parenting. Yeah, it has a name. I think there's also love and logic that you can use in classrooms. It's an anarchist, and it's a justice-based, reformative sort of methodology, I think. I can't remember all the right terms. Check out David Rodriguez. Chris says, as a guest for homeschooling, voluntarism, peaceful parenting, is a great, nice guy and easy to reach. Oh, yes, that'd be awesome. And I do have an episode on homeschooling. It's also a pretty anarchist. Now that if you did not already understand anarchy and you didn't already understand me, when you look at everything I do now, you'll see all of this stuff embedded in everything I do. But I do have a homeschooling episode. It's called A Homeschool World. And if you want to go check that out, I make many suggestions on how to homeschool in an anarchal way, and I provide some resources as well. So check that out. Didn't someone post a what kind of anarchist are you quiz? I don't know. I don't remember that. If so, I don't think I saw it. That'd be fun though, because there are so many types of anarchists, and it would be fun to know. I know that I posted, maybe I can find this. How about this? The political compass spectrum, Myers-Briggs. Sweet. This is rad. No, I just want the picture. Come on. There we go. This is awesome. This is that same, political spectrum we looked at earlier, where left and right are fiscal and up and down are more like authoritarianism, which I think it's an opposite south and north node. But anyway, they have all of these sort of isms around the outside, which essentially these are all philosophical sort of ideologies, I guess. And then inside of here, we have all of the Myers-Briggs personalities. So if you see yours, I'm usually ENFJ or INFJ, which are at least in the same quadrant. And so this is actually the place where I first learned of Proudhonian, however we say this, anarchism, was because it was somewhere near one of my... Here we go. Proudhonian anarchism is near my ENFJ when I'm an extrovert, but sometimes I'm an introvert, and I'm right on the 50-50 line. So half the time I take the test, I'm INFJ, and half the time I take it, I'm ENFJ. But you can find yours on here, and you can kind of see which economic and political systems are closely aligned with your Myers-Briggs personality type. And I don't know, fucking who made this or if it's accurate or whatever, but at least it has a ton of economic and political isms on it, and so it's really fun to look at either way. It's pretty cool. It's one of my favorite charts I've ever seen in my life. So and the twin towers just so happen to be right here, which is hilarious. But anyway, check it out here. I'll drop this little link over here as well. If there's any other links you want before we go, let me know so I can throw them in a chat for you, but I think I got most of the ones that were pretty interesting in there. But yeah, this is a fun chart. I used to look at this with my students after they did their Myers-Briggs, which was fun. You can't see it. Why the fuck would you know? Oh, because I'm retarded. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. I've done that like 4 times. I forget that my face is covering the page. Thanks, Chad. Yeah, so check this out. I think it's really fun. But it would be fun anyway to take that quiz that you were talking about, which anarchists are on you. They're all on here. Every type of anarchism is on here. That's one thing, even more than I knew of. Panarchism, for example. Free market anarchism. I knew about that one. I guess all the anarchisms are up here in the upper left quadrant. But it's fascinating. We could look at this for hours. INFP, a communist fuck. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know how actually accurate it is, but it is interesting to think about why they would place INFJ, for example, by survivalism. But I guess I kind of get it. That one at least, but who knows? Who knows about the rest of them? Could have some logic to it. Could just be like, hey, let's throw these on the chart and fucking see where they land. But anyway, as we look at anarchism in our lives, let's remember that we are actually all anarchists, whether we like it or not. We practice anarchy in many ways that we have never evaluated because we really haven't been allowed to. We've been told that anarchy is chaos and that anarchy is violence, and it is neither. It's the opposite of both of those things, interestingly enough. And people just don't understand that because they weren't taught it and because they were specifically programmed otherwise. And so when you're talking to people about it, you're going to come up against that same thing that everybody does, where they then, even if they get to the point where they're like, okay, I get that, like, anarchy, you know, in the tradition of it, the philosophy of it, the study of it, the tradition of it, which is hundreds of years long, I get that it's like that, but why don't you just pick another word now? And why don't you just use a different word to describe it so that people don't get, like, thrown off by your actually very peaceful, actually very, you know, humanity-filled, loving philosophy? And the answer is because we don't want to 1984 style cut people off from being able to find that tradition and all of that information and that rich, you know, depth of thought that's been poured into this term and these practices that have been developed over years. That would defeat the entire purpose. So no, we don't want to let them claim that term. We want to reinforce to everybody that anarchy is actually for lovers. Anarchy is all about love. Anarchy is about self-love and love of your community. And it's about being in a place where you are so responsible for yourself that you are a benefit to your community and that you help create community wherever you go, in a voluntary way that respects all of the people around you. So take that with you if you didn't already have it, and even if you do, even if you did, and spread it wherever you can. I think that this is one of the key ideas that can transform people. And as I pointed out, I practice anarchy in everything I do, and I do it intentionally, and I model it that way on purpose so that if anyone ever thought, Lindsay does things kind of cool, they might then, you know, be spurred to go start looking into it and practicing anarchy themselves. Do I practice anarchy in every way possible? Not even a little bit. I live in a, you know, capitalist, like, empire of, you know, this republic / democratic, whatever system we have going on here. And so obviously much of what I do is in those veins because that's what's going on around me. And I am not yet, you know, self-sustaining enough or I guess radical enough to start my own anarchal sort of commune or whatever. But I would love to aim for getting ever closer to that ideal. And so I try to embed as much of it as I can in everything that I do. And I hope that you are inspired to do the same and to, you know, remember that anarchy is all about love and peace and non-aggression and non-force. Those are the tenets, the basic tenets of it. And spread that again wherever you go. So until you are embodying every aspect of anarchy in the true sense of the word, and the deepest integrity that you can, everywhere you go, all of the time, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah. I can end the show, I promise.
It's a one-on-one lesson, so do your homework. Make your dome hurt while up on earth. My bones are blessed from holy dirt. Vibes manifested to words that told me search for verbs and adjectives to describe birth. Worth more than one can speak, while the tongue feeds a weak, a sour taste in your mouth, bittersweet. Words can also kill you when you sleep. Mind condition, low frequencies while the subconscious mind listens. I can tell a vision filled with lies, disguised as truth, and spread it like the word to the youth. Watch the tube. A place where the God gets booed is sorcery. To recreate a God forgery does more than meets the eye. Not too many know. Just hear me flow like the eye of Horus Pinio. Yeah, not ready to leave until we believe we're free to go. You hear me? Run.
Sculpted from the ether, the material will eat ya. Stuck on this plane, lanes use jet fuel to greet ya. The dimensional 3 ain't beating me on top of the 4th. Didn't climb Jacob's ladder to squab with a sword. Forged with Yggdrasil, branch down, try quiet your lamps now. Ascension past the matter, that they slam out they damn mouths. We ain't on land now, but they under over understand. Sacrificing wisdom, hoarding dumber, kosher, wicked hands. Putting faith in worthless worship of the mortals. Artificial portals, mass ingestion of the black goo. Bioengineered morsels, conversing with machine elves. Bypassing maggots, they stuck on Android screens now. I'm scrolling emerald tablets. Moloch living lavish, off the backs of the savage. Them clasped hands at the Sabbath. Smack of energy damage, they done twisted the tongues. But nanotech in the lungs, the awakening's begun. All they really can do is fucking
Run.